Hi there, Tone Deaf Monk. Hey, listen, this is just a quick intro into the video I'm about to share with you guys. And this was done with Simon Fisk, who is the owner-creator of a boutique brand out in Canada called Plunge Audio. And again, if you haven't seen my Plunge Audio Unity video, it'll give you a little bit more insight. But this was a really, really fun sit-down conversation at a coffee shop, noisy one, sorry about that, in Vancouver when Simon was out here doing some more work in the studio with his music, as he is still a musician. And that comes across. He's a genuinely great person, and you can see the passion that comes through in his and everything he does in life, as well as his IEMs that he's making, and how he puts them out. So it's one of these boutique brands that doesn't have a lot of launches, but at the end, when I left with Simon, I ended up leaving with a couple prototypes that, once finalized, I think these things will be an end game for a lot of people sub $1,000. Truly do. But watch the video, get a little bit more insight into Simon and Plunge Audio from Alberta, Canada. Here we go. Thanks. Hey there, I'm here with Simon Fisk, who is the face and creator of Plunge Audio. Now, if you haven't watched my Unity video, I encourage you to do so to get a little bit more information about that. But let me tell you a little bit about who Plunge Audio is, and welcome, Simon. Thanks for joining me.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, we're at a coffee shop in Vancouver here, and but Simon's in Vancouver just now, but he actually is from a different province in Canada, from Alberta. So if you're not familiar with Plunge Audio, it's a little boutique brand from our great white north of Canada. So I'll turn this over to Simon a little bit, and maybe Simon, if you can tell us a little bit more about Plunge Audio and what makes your stuff so different and so interesting.
That's a good question. I started Plunge Audio sort of officially in 2010. I'd been working on it for a few years before that, and really I happened upon it, if I'm honest. I'm a professional musician. That's what I've done all my life. And my older brother is an audiologist. And he had a hearing aid clinic in Calgary. And I was living in Vancouver at the time, and he gave me a part-time job at the hearing aid clinic and said, move to Calgary. Housing prices were cheaper. Moved to Calgary, and so I just started. Really, I would joke with my young son that your dad's a hearing aid repair guy. And so I worked in the back shop in the hearing aid clinic, just taking hearing aids apart and learning to fix them, and learning from both the audiologists there how to bring hearing aids back to life, from wax and moisture issues, learning how to fit hearing aids, changing the shells. I went to all the manufacturers, did little weekend courses on resoldering all their circuits, and the manufacturers loved it because I did all the repairs for the hearing aids in clinic. They didn't have to do anything.
And how did you get musicians involved? Like, how did you get there? Like, it just evolved into...
So it just, what happened was my brother sold the clinic, he moved to the East Coast. I was there, everybody else at the clinic had quit. I was going to quit. I was making a good living playing music, and the new owner was like, I kind of like you. Why don't you stay? I don't know what you're doing here, but why don't you stay and do your own thing?
Sure.
It was like, so I started making musician plug molds and hearing aid molds and such a thing. And I went to Long Oak Quaid and fit 23 employees at Long Oak Quaid with musician plugs. And there was one guy, the last guy at the end, and I give him credit for Plunge Audio, Ranjit. He's like, can you make me in-ear monitors? I'm like, I don't know. He was like, do you want to try? I'm like, sure, I'll try. So I took his impressions. He gave me $125. He said, build me a pair. And I just went back to the clinic, and I was just going through old shelves, and I just found some hearing aid circuits, and I just pulled them apart and rewired them, put them into a silicone shell. I was like, they work.
Yeah.
I gave them to him. This was 2009. He still wears the things.
Wow.
He still wears them. So I ended up building probably 600 pairs of those modular, selling them for $125.
Wow.
And that was and it was just, I wasn't set out to do it. It just sort of happened, and I was a musician. I was out with musicians, and they're like, oh, I heard you're building in-ear monitors, and that launched the whole thing. And then when I realized, it was like, the day I realized when the new owner of the clinic came in, and I had a lineup in the clinic to come see me in the back room for in-ear monitors, and the owner came in, he's like, what are you doing here? We have no clients, and you have a lineup of clients. I'm like, I think there's a business here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyway,
awesome.
So that started it, and from that I got interested in really learning how to do it.
And then more and more musicians. I mean, you have what, 10,000 pairs in?
Yeah, probably easily. Yeah.
Wow, in musicians' ears. And that's kind of when I kind of, we got your information. We kind of, Simon Plunge Audio kind of came into our world and this kind of IM community. And we learned a little bit about the Unity and it has a story. I mean, this is different from what we see in Jai-Fi in Malaysia. So tell us a bit about this shell. I mean, this shell is, it's unassuming. One of the things that's weird is you pick it up and it doesn't feel like anything. There's no real weight to it. And some of the things that surprised me is in Simon's case, and it was like, I was like, Simon, there's nothing to protect it, right? And these are just weird things that we normally get, and it's like, why? And it's like, well, so tell us about the shell. Like, why is this shell different from everyone else?
Well, so I'll try to make my story shorter. So, in building custom monitors for the better part of 15 years, I had a lot of, because they're expensive.
Yeah, and you were using resin, right?
I was using resin.
And custom molds and stuff.
I was taking all impressions myself and scanning and I was 3D printing before Ultimate Ears, before 64 Audio, before years before those guys.
Yeah.
I was 3D printing shit.
You said you have an EnvisionTech printer, the German printer.
I do, yeah, I gave it away. But from all those years of customs and because of the work involved in the custom thing, they're expensive. And I had a lot of clients who were like, isn't there like a universal fit that I can wear? And I really wholeheartedly believe there wasn't.
I don't think, well, until yours, there
I had never come across anything. There's lots of universals that you can wear sitting on the couch where it's okay, you can reach up and adjust the feel, you're good. But on stage, dancing around and swinging your head, I'm like, there isn't one. There is not a model on the market. My whole quest was to create one that actually worked. And from, of those 10,000 people, I probably took 9,500 of those impressions myself.
Crazy.
So I knew what the ear actually does. I knew what it did. Not just from building them, but actually taking impressions, going, oh, that's how. Yeah. That's why that goes in like that.
Because I do say that in my when I do reviews, because after the plungies, I judge everything according to yours. Because now you educated me about the nozzle shape and the nozzle angle and how it goes into your ear, and it goes up and in instead of, what did you say? It goes
in, up, and back.
In, up, and back.
Not down, out, and forward. So
that's right.
This is it's not a trade secret. People know what the ear does. But and I like these. I'm not going to say what they are, but I like these. But you see how it comes off the shell?
Yeah.
It goes out, down and forward.
Yes. So it's kind of poking into your side of your ear.
So what the problem with this is you can get it in. You can get it in properly. But as soon as you put the cable up and over and want to cinch it in the back, what it does is it pulls it out.
Right.
So you lose the seal.
Right.
So you don't get that. You don't get the locking mechanism that a musician needs on stage.
Jumping around, singing away.
So as you said, the ear canal goes in my left ear. It goes into the ear. It goes back, and it goes slightly up.
Yeah. And the other thing that is so different too about these is that kind of bulbous area right there that really just kind of fits into your.
Yeah, that's just that's a very natural shape of just about every ear I've run into.
And this is kind of like based off of a custom, right? But in a universal.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's the closest I've ever, and the most comfortable you're going to ever wear, right? Unless it's and I personally bought a pair of CIMs.
Yeah.
I don't like them.
Yeah.
I don't like them because they fill up my ear too much.
Yeah. I don't like customs anymore.
No, yeah.
I've got all kinds of customs.
And you don't have to do anything. These will fit how many different kinds of people? They'll fit almost.
Right now they're fitting probably close to 90%.
90%, yeah. Where the average one fits, if you're lucky, a fraction of that.
Well, it's a fraction, and for a musician on stage with these, better part of zero.
Yeah, because they'll just keep bouncing out, right?
They'll just keep falling out. They won't stay in. But they're not designed for musicians. I get that. That's not the.
So that kind of answers the question of why don't you make custom shells anymore? Because you designed and engineered this shell. But this shell, as far as I understand from talking to you, is done differently. It's not a resin shell, and it's not a metal shell.
Yeah.
So
where did that stem from?
Yeah.
Yeah. So after probably, and I'm not lying, probably 40 universal prototypes before I landed on this one. In the sort of when I finally sort of landed on this shape and this thing, at the time I was CNC machining them, and because I couldn't really even 3D print them because the supports it took to like hang this part. I had supports all over the nozzle tip, and it was just they're too fine and delicate to like sand and do it properly. So I was CNC machining them all.
Which is, you said, crazy expensive.
Well, I was doing it myself.
Oh.
Just super time consuming.
Okay,
like,
sure.
Immensely time consuming. So when I got to this point, when I landed, I'm like, this is the shell. This is what I want to. How are we going to do this? I went first to injection molding.
Okay.
And the injection molding guy's like, we can't injection mold that.
Because of that nozzle angle, right? The back.
Because of the nozzle angle, because it's like this concave thing that goes this way and then goes this way. Like there's no internal mold that we can get in there to pull out. It's impossible. You can't injection mold this shape. And it was immediate. I don't even know if it's true, but it was immediate eye-opening to like, this is why nobody does it like this. You can't injection mold.
Sure, you can't do it inexpensively or.
Yeah, it's going to cost you a fortune.
Right.
So I went to a CNC manufacturing place. I'm like, because I knew I could do it with the CNC machine, so I thought, oh, maybe they can do it. And I got a quote from a couple of the CNC machine shops, and they're like $600 US just for the 2 shells. I'm like, okay, that's not.
Well, and you technically could, but that IM would be then $4,000,
okay,
right?
yeah,
Then you add everything in the build, right? For sure.
We can't go that route. And then during COVID, when things just like were so slow, I was looking at this printer that had just come out, and it was like $250,000 printer, and I'm like, that printer can do what I want to do. Of course, I didn't have the $250,000 with the printer, But in my frustration with the CNC and the injection mold, not a possibility. There's got to be a way. And I was like, oh, somebody's got to have one of those printers.
And so you're talking about this nylon powder bed printer.
Yeah,
right.
I knew what it was.
Yeah.
I knew about the printer, so I
didn't know anything about it until I looked it up after you.
Yeah, I went to the website and I was like searching around who had them. Like, oh, I'm not going to tell. I'm going to say where it is, but they're in Canada.
Yes,
and they're
keep it Canadian.
Owned by a couple of brothers in BC.
Yeah.
And I reached out to them at 2:30 in the morning and like, can you guys do this? And I got a reply the next day and they're like, we could put 1,000 shells on our printer and print them exactly how you are with no supports to have to send them. I'm like, problem solved.
If you guys haven't seen a powder bed printer, it's a laser nylon powder 3D laser printed shell, and they build whatever object you have, and then they kind of blow it off, and then it gets, and then you get to the shape that you want, right?
Yeah, it's really incredible.
So, and that's kind of what makes Plunge Audio different from everybody else. Everyone else is either doing it the fast, quick, easy way, or universal that they can bang off and throw different drivers in. And that was huge, and that's why I think Plunge Audio, if we can keep your secrets, you're gonna go far, right? And that's the kind of shell-shaped build fit part of the aspect of Plunge Audio. But the bigger thing is too the tuning, right? I mean, musician, audiologist, all this experience, you put it together. And I know listening to the first one I listened to, the Unity, right, is very geared towards your experience with musicians, where it's very linear, it's very flat, it's it's about the most uncolored IM you can ever listen to. In fact, on the graph, people don't believe me on the 711 we use. It's like, I think there's something wrong with your graphing thing, because there's no way that can be that flat and sound the way it does, because it looks it sounds like the Unity has no bass, it has no highs, but that's not how it sounds. Right?
I know, isn't that fascinating?
And we were talking earlier about how our brain picks up bass, and it translates into the rest of the frequencies, or if you had something that was too bright, but the Unity that you came out with, and we were also playing today with different sources, and that was the thing that we came up with in the Canucks Audioholics group, is that we all had different DAPs, right? So I would try it with one and go, hey, this is how it sounds with that, and then Kevin and Bennett would try it with a different one, and different cables. It's so transparent. The Unity is so transparent. And I said in my Unity video that if you're a non-cable believer, if you don't believe the actual cable, and I know this is kind of deep controversial subject, right? But if you were a non-believer of cables, the Unity would make you a believer, because it's that transparent.
It's so responsive, eh?
Exactly. So you put a silver cable on it, you get more highs. You put a copper cable on it, brings out the bass. Right? And it's the same as your tracks, and it's the same as the source. It's just following the input equals output.
Really? That's a good,
And what surprises people about the Unity, what I thought was saying, is people would put it in and they go, holy shit, this has bass. Right? It's like, where did the treble extension come from? Right? How did this... Talk to me about your stage, because the stage of the Unity is in a different plane altogether.
So I mean, that's my whole thing is the stage and imaging, and so I'm an upright bass player. Right. So I'm performing all over the world, and when from like playing through an amp, or say I'm in the studio and I'm like my pickup is plugged into a DI, and then that's feeding to my ears. I'm like, it sounds really direct, and like it doesn't have like the acoustic quality and all the overtones. So for me, it's always been, how do I add air? How do I close mic my bass but have it sound like it's in a big room. So how do I do that in ears? How do I take a nice U87 microphone on my upright and a nice RCA mic that's 4 feet back and create that big open
sense of
thing?
space, depth.
I mean, that's what I envisioned on stage with wearing in-ears. Was it's got to sound like that. I don't want it to sound like a direct box. So it's always been my, I don't know, compulsion to create something with that air around it. And I know, honestly, the very first pair of Unities was in fact a tubeless, damperless, open canal design. And he was Toby Keith's sound man, and I sent it to him. Weaver. He never paid me for those.
You still owe money.
Still owe me money. And he got them, and he's like, these are the greatest things I've ever heard in my life. It was the only pair I built. For some reason, it sort of shifted, but that came back to the Unities, and I'm like, how am I going to add air? So the couple of big things from building customs was dampers.
Right, you'd have to use some kind of
dampers. I understand why. I use dampers for 15 years.
Never
again. I will
tubes?
never use a damper again. Yeah, dampers and tubes.
So like a plastic tube,
That's how
and
everybody do.
Shove a filter in it, right?
Shove a filter up. That's how you get the low pass filter, right?
Sure.
And so in that pair that I built for Weaver, no tubes, no dampers, and I'm like, why does it sound so? I likened it to. I don't really go to the horse races, but I likened it to like a thoroughbred racehorse in the gate, like ready to go, and he's like pushing the. He's just excited and ready. That's what they sounded like to me. And I'm like, I like that quality of like, let's go.
Yeah,
like,
the energy's there, ready to explode as soon as you put the poker up the bum, right?
Yeah.
Don't try that.
So that's what I really wanted to create, and one of the immediate thing was I don't want any dampers. They're closing. No dampers, no tubes. Both drivers wide open into an open nozzle.
Yeah. So don't go too far into your trade secrets. We're not going to talk about that. But that's a good point. Like in the Plunges, there is no... And everyone else does that. And they put, again, dampers, tubes, all these things and that's why your stage and listening to the Plunges, 1 minute you could be, like I was listening to Metallica live, S&M, right? The first one.
Yeah.
And you sound like you're in the mixing booth up in 200 feet up, right? And the orchestra's all the way around and Metallica singing in the center. So clear. Like in that track, you are right beside the recording guy, right? Yeah. And the next track, like Melody Gardot, she's sounding like she's sitting on your lap, and she's got the microphone, and she's singing to you, like 2 feet from you.
Yeah.
Right. Give me another IM that can do that, and
you can hear her lips on the.
For sure, the nuances of the breath, right? And that was again unique, I thought, with the Plunges, and that's what kind of made. Those kind of so resolving, and I wrote some interesting stuff about that. I mean, and I think that's the way to describe that. For me and a lot of people, or if you're an audiophile and you want an uncolored tuning, the Unity is it, right? I mean, studio monitoring, stage monitoring, musicians, fantastic. I wrote transparent, open, resolving, unrelentingly honest, entirely sculptable, really, and then, so you stopped doing CIMs, did this one, this is taken off, the Unity oh my God, it's super popular. And some of the other things that I want to kind of lead into this, because I'm sitting here with Simon and he's letting me try a couple of different ones, and these are close, right? They're close. So for more different audiophiles who really want a little bit more coloration.
Yeah.
So our group, right, the Canucks, the Audioholics, and others pushing Simon, going, hey, make it a little bit more colored, add some more juice, add some more bass, right? And he's doing the pushback a little bit. Like everyone's sending him their favorite IMs, and he's taking a listen to it. And there's an internal struggle I can feel going on of the musician purity versus colored sound.
Yeah.
Right? But we're winning. So there's stuff coming down the pipe pretty close.
Yeah, there's numerous things coming down the pipe. You don't want to look in my shop because there's way more than numerous things.
Yeah, I know. We gotta nail you down in your time, and sit you behind the desk, chain you to your desk, right, and get you to crank on it. But it's exciting. Yeah. So I think I want you guys to. And I'm thankful to sit down with Simon and actually.
Yeah, I'm really thankful too.
You know, to bring a Canadian company forth. Not a lot. There's not a lot in the U.S. I mean, you've been around as long as the 64 Audios. And
you started the same year.
Yeah, and then the Fur Audio broke off. And, right?
Yeah, totally.
And you must be doing something right because they're kind of, I see some kind of emulation, but not. They're doing it differently.
Yeah, they're doing it differently.
We just leave it at that. But that's pretty cool.
Well, I wanted to thank you for having me because this, you can't see what we have here, but Jason has brought us, 3 different players and all these different monitors and cables, and we're just talking about what each one does. And I'm listening to some of my plunges on some of them. I'm like, I don't like it. My plungy. It's been a real eye-opening to the audiophile world. So thank you for introducing me to your world.
Yeah.
Me coming from the musician world of like it has to be this way to like, oh, okay, now I understand.
Yeah, because somebody could be getting an impression of the plungies and going, I don't like the way that sounds because it's too bright or too thing, and it's like, well, maybe that's your cable, that's your source.
What cable are you using? What
maybe
player
that's your file.
Yeah,
are you streaming? What are you doing? Right?
Yeah, it's enlightening.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
And because the IMs are so like, there's nothing like it in the IM world right now. I mean, and that's not just me. Everyone who's listened to these things kind of says the same thing.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. The response
that
I'm getting is and unique, is a compliment to me. There's a guy in, I don't know, he's in North Carolina or Virginia or something. He's like, these are lifetime. Like, I will never. This is a lifetime. Like how? That's amazing. Mm-hmm. There's so many pairs. And like this is a keep forever pair.
Well, that's the other thing too with these resin shells, and I was kind of alluding to earlier with even Simon's little cases. And there's no protection. There's no like fur lining on these things because they're indestructible. You say like musicians can step on these things. Don't do that. But I'm just saying, right? Yeah. I mean, and that was the other kind of part of the design process and the whole thinking behind it. It's
No, I wanted something resilient that I know. A singer, I won't say his name, but flings his ear up because it looks cool.
Okay.
And throws it, and he's been wearing customs for years. Keeps breaking them.
It's probably cheaper than his Stratocaster.
I want something that a musician can pull over his ear and throw it a concrete floor, and then pick him up, put him back in his ear, and keep going. And this is doing it.
So stay tuned.
Yeah.
For some interesting and exciting stuff coming down the pipe from Plunge Audio. Thank you, Simon, and
thanks,
looking forward to for these getting into more ears and the different tuning. This other beast, I was calling it the beast, right?
It might stick.
There's a beast, and then there's a beast extreme.
There's a Beast Extreme.
Yeah.
And thanks to Matchstick Coffee here in Vancouver for letting us film while they're closing up.
Yeah, they were pretty cool.
Matchstick, great coffee.
Till next time.